Good evening. Who's this, Don? Where have you been? Hope everything's okay. Also, it's Friday, not Wednesday. No, man. The weekdays are a mere suggestion. And if we decide it's Wednesday, it's Wednesday. That's how it works. Don't let yourself be held back by arbitrary weekdays. Who decided this anyway? You know, like, wasn't me. So now I'm deciding it's Wednesday and we're gonna rock it. Anyway, so hope you've had a good week on this fine Wednesday evening. It's been a while. I have been gone. I was on vacation and I thought I could or would stream, do whatever, but my little daughter was more work on vacation than during normal days. So I was like, I'm not gonna inconvenience my fiance with annoying streams and stuff like that. So Wednesday, it's Friday, Duck. It is what you want it to be. And I want it to be a Wednesday, so. When are you launching the Duck meme coin? Nah, never, dude, never. We don't need no meme coins. Anyway, it's nice seeing you all. Hope you've been doing okay. Where's Cred? So, given my absence, our schedule's been completely thrown off. But Casual Friday is gonna be tomorrow. Because, as everyone knows, tomorrow is Friday. And today is Wednesday. Because that's how it goes. So we're gonna record an episode tomorrow, and you're gonna get to see that. So today is not gonna be too long. I'm also very tired. I got back from my flight this morning. The flight got cancelled. Like, I was supposed to be home yesterday already, but then the flight got cancelled because people in Germany protested for higher wages. And then I got a flight in the middle of the fucking night, which was great. So, yeah. Anyway, let's get this thing going, shall we? But before we do, big shout out to Woo for sponsoring the show. Really appreciate their support. Really appreciate them not getting tired of us and our Friday being Wednesday and whatever shenanigans that we've been doing, but yeah, they've been excellent partners. Go check them out. Links are in the description. Today's Wednesday, tomorrow's Friday, said an anonymous duck on the internet, which I trust with my money. Oh, you should not trust me with your money, my friend. But if you do, you can send it to me on my wallet. And then we'll see what we do with it. We can do communism with your money. Not with mine, but with yours. So you just all send it to me, and then we'll see what we do. Your thoughts on DOGE? I'll talk about it, but briefly. I think we're going to go through Bitcoin, ETH, maybe Solana, and then DOGE, but briefly, and that's it. So I can get to bed. Hey Doc, much love to you on this glorious Wednesday. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. You get it. Look, guys. Someone gets it. He gets it. Anyway, a few things happened while I was gone. In my opinion, the market actually for the first time since a long time, actually looks shortable. Now, obviously, I'm not advising anyone to short, but there's actually a short setup. Haven't had one of those ever, basically, since the bottom. I've been telling everyone that has listened, even though you should not listen to whatever the fuck I say, but I've been saying don't short. I kind of get it. At this point. Like, there's a decent-ish setup, and that setup is quite high time frame, which, like I said, we haven't had in a while. So here we have the monthly chart, right? I'll go over it. Obviously, I'm myself not shorting. I kind of would like to actually. Kind of seems like a good spot. Seemed like a better spot earlier, but I'm not really in the shorting business anymore, but this one's tickling me. So this is the monthly time frame. We closed that resistance, right? Which isn't necessarily the end of the world, happens all the time, right? Like for example, you can see here, we closed that resistance. So you might ask like, hey, this is not that big of a deal. Happened before and we went up. Why is this time, or might this time be different, right? And the difference is in the time frames, right? Like the weekly and the daily. If you skip down the time frames, you have a little bit of confluence on the time frames, whereas here at the monthly, we had less of that. If you remember back when we closed at like 35, 37K, right? We were trading above, like we closed the monthly at resistance. Yes, that was in here, but we closed above weekly support, right? So you didn't really have confluence on across time frames. Here we have a closeout resistance. We wiped out the highs, and I'm not saying this is the top of this rally. I'm just saying like there's a short opportunity that may or may not play out for the first time in a long time. That might just lead to a pullback towards like whatever, where it was like 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago. But yeah. Anyway, closed that resistance, wiped out the high, right? That's a decent setup. I usually like to take these on the long side, right? Like you wipe out everyone, like you close at support, you wipe out everyone. That's a good trade on the monthly time frame. Usually goes quite well. We have a little bit of the opposite going here, where it's like closed at resistance, wiped out. Now if it trades a little bit lower, you could see a pullback, right? But that's just the monthly time frame. And that's still like the trend is still very, very bullish. So there's not really a need to be too overly concerned just because I say there's setup. Where it gets a little bit juicier is on lower time frames, right? Same story here, here on the weekly time frame. Basically closed that resistance, wiped out the high. The Europeans love this. the short gang. Anyway, same kind of setup here, right? You saw the monthly close at resistance, wipe the high. Well, weekly did the same, closed at resistance, wipe the high. Is now trading a little bit lower. Trend is still massively in favor of the bulls, right? So this is most definitely counter trend. Like if you would be bearish. So it's not necessarily advisable, and generally momentum is still up. I'm just like I'm just playing devil's advocate as I'm saying there is for the first time since a long time a setup that can be played on the short side. I'm not myself playing it. Anyway, same story as on the monthly. On the weekly time frame, this is not in itself the strongest short setup. Just because it closes out resistance doesn't mean you won't necessarily need to short it, right? But the lower in the time frames you go, the worse, in my opinion, it gets. We had a consolidation here of 4 days, right? And if you look back, we had one fake out where we had like a consolidation that broke to the downside that immediately went back up. But otherwise, since basically forever, since the ETF candle, we just had consolidation up, consolidation up, consolidation up, 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 up. And this one's the first time where that hasn't happened, led to a dump. And I mean, this is, I think, a weekly level probably. Yeah, shouldn't be on here. What the fuck? Oh, I'm an idiot. I am an idiot. Anyway, we have this situation going, and these should not be on here either. I'm well prepared, as you guys can see. To be fair, I've come home today, so so that's at least at support, right? The daily time frame. But like I said, this is a little bit of changing character, and if that that's not necessarily bearish per se, it's at support, but it'd be more comfy basically the moment it starts trading back above this consolidation. It's the same thing that I said when we're trading here. We broke to the downside, and I was like, yeah, I mean, you can buy the dip whenever, but like if it trades above this consolidation, that's such a brain dead long. I mean, might as well just take that one. And then there was a low time frame entry anyway. But it's the same kind of story here, where yes, this is a dip, and dips have been very nice to be bought, like, or have been nice to buy. Jesus Christ. But yeah, there might be a better setup, I think, above this consolidation, because otherwise you might be buying and then it just rug pulls you. And given how high it is, these kind of retraces can go quite deep, as you have seen today. Like today was quite aggressive. So yeah, the daily is not that bad. Daily's at support. Monthly, weekly, like I said, closed out resistance. Daily's at support, but it did not hold the consolidation, which happened before, but that was that was not as aggressive as today was. And the thing that actually looks the worst is the 4-hour chart. And excuse all of these drawings, we're gonna go to another one because I'm too lazy to change the where the lines show on the time frames. And this one is basically, and it's something that we've discussed on this channel quite a bit, what we've been doing here. And this has, like, I've commented on this to the upside, right, where we're trading in here. I'll do it on past price action. I'll show it on current price action, right? So when the market is strong, right, something that happens oftentimes, and this is something that a lot of people on Twitter keep falling for, it's these stop runs ish. And I mean, this is on Binance, but so you get a high, you run it, and then people are like, oh, this is so bearish, and you do it again and again and again, and it just walks up, right? Basically, look, you go above the highs, and then you dump a little bit, whatever. But what this is basically just like a bunch of people are just aping into the highs. And this actually is a show, like, if this continues to happen, this shows strength, right? People are willing to kind of push it higher, and wick it up. And then a bunch of bears basically jump in because they're like, oh, it's SFP, whatever. It's not. This is usually bullish, right? And I was commenting on the fact I think it wasn't even this one. The one that I was heavily bullish on was, where was it? I think it was here. It happens all the time though, so it's not like, so basically, like, you get these SFPs, and this one's a little bit cleaner. And then people are like, oh, this is going to dump. And eventually it might, right? But then it just goes. And if you see this, it usually is a bullish sign or the bearish sign. And a lot of people will tell you it's bearish, but it's not. And this has happened the entire way up, basically. It's been, recent price action has been the same, right? Like I said, here at 30K. And then you have it higher up as well, right? Where you get all of these... the market basically trades above the high, sells off, does it again. And this, what we're doing right now, is a little bit the opposite. Not fully clear yet, right? But what we've been seeing is basically you have these lows, they get run, and you will see, for example, this one, we can go on the lower time frames. And what happens is you sell off, you bounce, and people are like, oh, this is the SFP, now it goes up, and then it just fucking dumps. And then you do the same thing here, sell off, you take it out, you bounce, people are like, oh, fuck yeah, let's go. And then it dies again. And it does this over and over and over again. And that's not necessarily a bullish sign. It's a sign of, like, okay, you finally have sellers coming in. Doesn't have to mean prices are going to go lower, but it's the first time that has happened in this rally. And it's usually more common, like to the downside. This happens all the time. It's not necessarily a bad sign per se. It's just the first time that we've really had this ever since the ETF times, right? We had it when the ETF came. People were like, oh, sell the news maybe. Since then, it's just been up only. So there's a few low time frame concerns. There's a few higher time frame concerns, which in general, just if you add everything together, opens the possibility to actually just short this thing, right? Which I This is the first time I'm saying it since 15, 16K. Doesn't mean it's going to be a good one, obviously. It's been a bullish trend. It's been very bad to fade it, but it's the first time there's a decent setup, right? And then I was like, okay, if we have a good setup, I might as well talk about it, even if I'm not going to take it myself. Does that make any sense or not? It probably doesn't make any sense, but that's kind of how I look at it. And like, just because I see this and just because I'm saying like, hey, there's a setup, doesn't have to mean like, hey, okay, this is gonna nuke whatever. I'm just saying like, we didn't have any bearish setup. Like the people that have been shorting this thing have been retarded beyond belief. And I think at this point right now, they're actually not, right? Like this is actually just not a dumb setup to take. And I mean, if you take profit on the way up, I mean, I did take profit at like 37, 38. That's one thing, but if you're shorting something as obviously strong, that's a little bit dumb, right? But here, I see the setup. I like it. If this was me, 2018, 2019, like back in the day, I would heavily short this thing and then short like the more popular coins, because they're gonna nuke more than Bitcoin if you're right. But I don't, like I said, I don't really short anymore. So there's a setup to short, but you think it still looks bullish? No, I don't think it looks bullish. Like this kind of looks like shit. But like this is the first time it actually just doesn't look that good to me either. Like this is a short that I have technical reason to like, but also just looking at this thing just kind of seems more likely than not that we're gonna get like actually this short setup to play out. Like I think the odds are good, the technical setup is good. I'm just not taking it because I would have to trade leverage with it, and I don't. So like I trade spot. So given that, the short is out of the question. And maybe that's good for me, right? Maybe I would be shorting and this thing would be trading at 100K in 2 weeks. Very possible given how it's been trading. Because the funny thing is, like, if this pulls back, and even if it pulls back like horrendously, right? If it pulls back 40%, it's at 43K. Like that's the typical bull market pullback. Now I don't think it's gonna pull back 40% if it pulls back. But that's the typical Bitcoin pullback that we've gotten over the years, right? And that's still fucking insane high prices. So we're good on that front. It's not that bad. I generally think this is not the top. It's gonna go higher. And that's like the thing. Basically, like, yes, it doesn't look that great on the monthly. It doesn't look that great on the weekly. It doesn't look bad, to be fair, on both of those. It doesn't look good on the lower time frames. But I think generally this is not the top. I think we're gonna go higher, and I think there's a good chance we're gonna trade at 90, 100K. So all of what I said is basically just like, yes, these are higher time frames, so this could take a little bit if the setup plays. But generally speaking, like, we're gonna be trading higher. So no, it just basically means like and this is something I like to do and love to do. And the reason why I bought 15, 16K so aggressively is because I was like, yeah, I mean, it could go lower, but I'm pretty sure it's going to trade much higher. So you know where the market is going to go, right? Like, yeah, it might do this, but it's probably going to go higher. And this is still the same, right? Where I'm like, it's probably going to go higher. They're probably going to get towards like 90K-ish. So that makes trading in the long direction easier. If I was like, okay, the market is most definitely going to retest 30K, which I don't think. But if I was in that camp, that makes the trading easier too, right? Where you're like, oh yeah, I think it's going to go towards 30K. It might go higher, like short term, but I just need to look for good setups so I can trade it into that. But like I said, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So the long setup is more, like long setups generally are more attractive, given I think price is gonna go higher. But right now, for the first time, long time, there's a short setup. Capo was right, yeah. Capo was right. Shorting 16K, target 12. He's right at 60, 68. Is what it is. You said that we would see alt season after Bitcoin settles last time. What do you think now? Still the same. Like if you get a big pullback on Bitcoin, and I mean, so basically like, okay, we talked about the setup and why there is like some reason to believe that maybe this goes down a little. If it does go down, right, where does it go? So we closed at the high of the monthly block, which turns this into support, right? So we have support at 57K. That's the very, very aggressive kind of buy where you're like, okay, fuck it. Like, and this is high time frame talking, right? Like this is on the monthly time frame, which, I mean, for example, like here, this was support never hit, right? I'm just saying like if you're like, oh, I just want to trade the monthly levels, this is the first support level that you've got. And that's the aggressive one, right? Because if you're buying in the same block, it's quite aggressive, generally speaking. Like if you have a resistance here, trade into it. If you do this and you buy here, that's an aggressive trade. Now, if you take this as resistance generally, and you're like, okay, it's gonna pull back and then push through, a lower price would be less aggressive. But obviously, the lower it goes, the less likely it's gonna be to hit. Right? So 57 first support, and then really good support 45. It's monthly support. I generally think, I just really like how this chart looks, but I generally think could be like this now that we've moved a little bit, given this is a little bit more recent and more important. So like that's the new support. Worst comes to worst, you want to be buying anywhere in there. But yeah, that's the monthly time frame, right? And then if you go on the weekly time frame, you have supported 59, 60, right? Basically going back towards these highs, and I think that's actually not like that's quite reasonable. Like if you shorted above 70, you're like, I don't wanna do the monthly time frame trade, and I think it makes a lot of sense because the market's so bullish. I think that's the most reasonable kind of TP for a short, where you're like, I'm not capo. I like what I'm given. I think that would be it. Also doesn't have to be hit, but yeah. So there you have your supports. I don't think there's anything on the lower time frames, like on the 4 hour, like on the daily or on the 4 hour, like all of this shit. It's gone up so fast that there's no structure on the way. I think this is a little bit like, if you wick into any of these, like if you wick towards 52K, yeah, that's a buy. But anything other than that, like, it's not that great. Doesn't mean the price is just gonna move through everything. I'm just saying, like, you're gonna have to basically decide on the fly. The low time frames don't give that much. Dawn, I bought your Pepe call at 139. Reckon I'm good to just hold. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. I love it when people get rich off of things I say, and then I don't have anything, and I don't have any of it. So you bought here, and you're asking me if you're good. I mean, you're fucking good, bro. Like, you're up like 500%. That's quite good. I wouldn't necessarily complain about that one. It depends on kind of like your read on the cycle, you know, like if you're like, okay, this is the end of the cycle, meme coins are pumping, retail is back, then obviously you would want to take profit. But given, like, I don't think it's necessarily the end of the cycle. Seems unlikely. Seems premature. Pepe seems like a decent meme coin to bet on. So I think you're good, yeah. You're never going to go out of this trade with a loss. Like, there's no way. I think if it goes anywhere close to a 2x from where you were, like anywhere close to this, then I mean the trade's just invalidated, right? I think generally a close below the previous high would invalidate the trade. So worst comes to worst, if you want to be like, I want to stick with memes as long as I can, I think it becomes hard to justify sticking with Pepe below like 3.6 whatever. And I know that's quite far away, but also like that was a 5.6x. So yeah, and then you just have to decide whether you're willing to give back that much. So, Duck, how do you manage not to get to, how to not get pulled into a trade other than being busy with life? I mean, if I don't have a setup, I'll probably not take the trade. Just how it is. Like if I don't have a proper setup or a good reason to be in a trade, and I like most of the time, I don't know where the market is gonna go. Most of the time, just there's few moments where I'm like, there's a good setup. It kind of feels right. Everything is set up perfectly. This is probably gonna go one way or the other. And in those moments, I just tend to bet big and make sure it counts. And it almost always, like when I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty damn, I'm pretty damn certain. Like when I'm in that kind of mood, whatever, when I feel it, and I have a good setup on top, almost always goes right. Very rarely goes wrong. So I just wait for that. That's my edge, you know, like that's what I'm good at. If I was just trading every hand that I'm given, right? Like I get up in the morning, I look at the market, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna trade this. I'd be losing money, I'm pretty sure. So I just wait until the conditions are right, and then I take my trade, and usually it goes right. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Sometimes you lose. That's how it is. Anyway, that's Bitcoin. Like I said, there's a decent, if not good, short setup there. But that doesn't have to mean that prices have to go down just because there's a good setup. On ETH, we kind of hit resistance, also retracing a little. That one's a little bit tough because where the fuck do you buy? If it goes down, I think 3K seems like a decent bet. Like this area, look. And if it doesn't go down, where do you buy? And the answer to that is quite tough too, because I mean we talked about this, and I was like, if it closes above 2.5, the next resistance is all the way at 4. That played out quite nicely, but yeah, if anything, like any close above 4 probably takes it to new all-time high. So like that's the resistance to watch. I think 3K is the support to watch. If that fails, I mean ETH's just fucked. For the short term anyway, can still, like, even if this pulled back quite a bit, would obviously still be a good chart, right? So, but short term wise wouldn't be good. So 3K has to hold, 4K has to break, and then it looks quite good. On the ETH front, that's not great. It still looks kind of shitty. Looks better than a lot of other things to me anyway. Like I look at Link against Bitcoin, not great. I look at Litecoin, obviously not great. XRP, quite shit. Bitcoin Cash actually doesn't look that bad, but still not that great. Like you go through this list, like altcoins, like at least the older ones, not really doing so well. ADA, not that good. BNB has been outperforming, which is quite impressive given the lack of strength in the altcoin sector. But generally speaking, most stuff has been nuking in the last few weeks against Bitcoin. To last months, to last years, right? It's just a few outperformers, and one of them is Solana. That's been going up into resistance, basically. Still the same, like we talked about this. I was like, this is gonna take a while, and I still think that is the case, right? Solana, BTC at resistance. I think this is gonna. I'd be surprised if it breaks. I think if anything, it's more likely that this actually goes down a little. Like rolls over here a little bit into lower support. But if it does break out, Solana seems like a decent bet, right? But I wouldn't wanna be bullish necessarily into that resistance. And if it breaks it, this is the last one, the all-time high resistance kind of shit. But that's kind of what I'm looking at on Solana. But that's one of the few outperformers, and I think that's mainly because it was just dumping so hard. And it's something that you will see quite a bit, like when strong hands get washed out, if it bounces, like if it squeezes, it usually squeezes and just kind of chills in an area above where it was previously, and then it decides its direction. That's kind of exactly where we are, right? So if you, and I think the best way to look at this is Sol ETH, and this is basically like, I think Sol ETH, that must be a better Sol. Doesn't really matter. Sol USD on Binance, ETH USD. We'll do Binance as well. Longer history. And this is basically like, you look at this, we had this massive dump here when FTX went down, right? Like everything nuked. And now we're finding like this finds a base here above that price level. And I think at this point, it's just going to go sideways / not do so well. But I could be very wrong on that. And like the price action this week has actually been quite impressive. So maybe I'm wrong on this, on the Sol weakness compared to ETH. Could be, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I think generally speaking, I wouldn't want to be bullish into this monthly Sol BTC resistance. All I'm saying. But yeah, I think generally, and this is like how the market is set up right now. And this is also why I think that ETH might outperform in the next week or two, maybe even a little bit longer. If this Bitcoin setup plays out and actually plays bearish, right? I think ETH will outperform, but to the down, like it will outperform, but because it's not dumping as much as other things, basically. And that might be, we talked about this before, right? That might be the curse of ETH, where ETH BTC starts doing better than other things the moment everything goes down. And I think that might be the case, where you get a bunch of dumping, but ETH doesn't dump as much, but still doesn't do well, right? Which is very frustrating for anyone that's holding ETH, because ETH's been underperforming for so long. And then you're kind of sitting there being like, oh, it's finally my time. And then the market dumps and you're not really making money anyway. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this thing. We'll have to wait and see. But I just generally, like, with the setup that we have right now, like legit the most interesting trade for me, the one that I would love to take, is basically like the Bitcoin short. It's the only one that I find really interesting, and that's not necessarily the best sign. And then obviously, like, I mean, there's going to be, I think Dogecoin is going to be an interesting dip to buy if Bitcoin, like if the Bitcoin weakness that I think might be coming based off of the semi-good bearish setup plays out. There's going to be a few coins that are going to be interesting. Sol's going to be one of them, I think, because basically whenever you have something that performs really well when everything goes up, it usually washes out deeper than other things because people are just trading it with leverage. So it does something like this. But then people bought this for a reason, so it recovers faster. So I think Solana is probably going to be good if we get a washout, just because it's going to nuke and going to recover probably as one of the faster ones. And then everything that you want to have a position in that you don't have one yet. For me, that's Dogecoin, that's Uni, and a few others that I'm going to talk about another day. But yeah, that's kind of it, I think. Hope that makes sense. Any questions? Thoughts on ADA? I mean, I think ADA is kind of dog shit, as like my personal opinion. I don't like the project. But that aside, I mean, charts uninspiring, not bad. The USD charts, whatever. BTC chart, like it's not great. Like when you have this kind of chart, I'm like, okay, might as well just trade Bitcoin. Like maybe I would be interested in trading ADA above 1400 sats. Is this sometimes Binance does dumb shit with sats and they remove one number and you say the wrong thing, but I think it's 1400 sats anyway. 14 100. Like above there might be interesting, but right now, like if you're bullish, this doesn't look like it's gonna outperform Bitcoin necessarily. So I might as well just buy Bitcoin or buy something more like stronger. Solana, for example, has been outperforming Bitcoin for a while. It's more interesting than ADA. I think there's a better bet. There's a lot of better bets, I think, than ADA. Why is Uni interesting? Because I use it. I like it. And I mean, the chart's not that bad. Look, I just showed you ADA, right? Look, the comparison. You can make it directly. So ADA, BTC, you had an impulse that fully retraced, right? So basically, we had a little bit of an impulse, fully retraced all the way back down to it. I hate those kind of breakouts, right? Breakouts that full retrace tend to fuck you over more than anything else. Like, you go like this. If it goes like this and doesn't come back to the support, it usually just goes. If it comes back to the support, especially if it is a bleed out, like if it does this, breaks out, and then does this, this is one of my least favorite things to buy. Sometimes do it if sentiment is bearish enough, like on Bitcoin or whatever. But it's very tough. It's not my favorite kind of trade, because what often happens is it just nukes and then you just literally bought into the deviation of sorts, right? Like false breakout, whatever. Now, if you compare that to Uni, like it's not even close to where the impulse started, and that's why altcoins are just giga tanking, right? Like altcoins are not altcoins are not doing well, and that's showing relative strength. Even today, 5% down, DOGE down 6%, and then you go towards other things, and they are down quite a bit more. And that's that was a narrative play, right? Like, because they were like, oh, fee sharing, whatever. Those tend to retrace easy, and it hasn't. So I like it. That's why it's one of the ones that I'm gonna watch for an entry. I'm not saying I'm gonna buy it, but if there's an interesting play to be made, it's one of the ones that I would be interested in. Salam alaikum, Dak. Salam alaikum. I think it's a dumb strategy just to buy ETH and other altcoins if ETH gets to 3K. I mean, it's not the worst. I've heard of worse. It's a pullback, and it's quite aggressive one. I think would make sense, because if you get that pullback, like if it pulls back to 3K, even if it's bearish and it wants to go lower eventually, like those tend to bounce, right? So I'm not hating, because then, like, even if it's bearish, I'm not saying it is. I hate that I always have to say this, right? Because people always take me out of context. But like, let's say this nukes, there's a very high chance it bounces. So you get like a quite nice 10, 15, 20% move on ETH, which would be bigger on other altcoins. Even if it's bearish, that's a decent trade to be taken, right? So I'm not hating on it. Whether you want to hold that or not is something that has to be decided once that happens, or if that happens, because it doesn't have to happen, obviously. Where's the Doge tip to buy? Down at 200 sats, I think. Like, ignore all of this, fuck this. Anything in here interesting. And then on the USD pair, I think generally anything, like I'm gonna buy anything at 0.1-ish. Like, and yeah, I know this is like a somewhat, I don't even know where that line comes from. Whatever, we'll remove it. Somewhat of a false breakout, way too deep pullback, but given I think Bitcoin is going to go higher, if Dogecoin gets anywhere close to 0.1, I think it's an interesting one. And I think generally Dogecoin is interesting. I think there's a chance that Dogecoin goes to $1, and the chance is not that little. Like I think it's like 10, 15, 20% of likelihood to play out. And that's like, it just needs a little bit of retail hype, and crypto Twitter is gonna get on it anyway. So anything close to 0.1 is interesting just on that alone, right? Because it's from 0.1 to $1, it's a 10x. And if I think that's somewhat likely, even if it's just like 15%, it's not the worst trade in the world. And then obviously it can go to 0.5, and that's more likely than 1. So just generally think that's a decent play. But it depends on how we get there, obviously. Don, why you don't even have Telegram coin in your watch list? Because I couldn't care less. Like, I don't care about any of these coins necessarily. I have these coins in my list because they make me understand the market better, right? As in, like, I want to know how the market, like, I know how Litecoin trades, and I know the people that trade Litecoin, and I know exactly what it should be and should not be doing, right? Because I've been trading this for like, feels like 10 years already. Not quite, obviously, but so by me having history with this, I can understand the market a little bit better by just looking at the chart. Whereas if I have some random shitcoin that is new, it doesn't really tell me much other than just that random shitcoin. And then, I mean, I can always type this in, and like if I find an old coin that I find interesting that is new, I'll type it in. These ones are the ones that I'm just like, they help me understand where the market's at. Like I look at BNB, that's interesting. I mean, to be honest, Bitcoin Cash, Liberty, like there's a few useless coins in there. I think most of these are actually useless, but that tells you quite a bit generally. Like if Litecoin goes up, for example, and this is something I said, like you got this impulse here, right? That was on the 11th of March. You go on Bitcoin, and that was basically this impulse. So we had Litecoin go up, and that was the beginning of the down move. And I mean, 4th of March, Bitcoin spiked too. Let's see if that somewhat kept in. Yeah, look at that, like close enough anyway. So like if shit like Litecoin goes up, you know, you're fucked, because then people are just going and buying the biggest trash available. And I mean, they are technically, I think Litecoin is actually better than a lot of other things. Like the meme coins are obviously completely and utterly useless, but Litecoin doesn't, like the use that Litecoin has. I mean, the problem is, right, like if you're not the best at what you do in crypto, then I mean, what the fuck are you even doing, right? Like if you're just getting overtaken by someone, like you might as well be useless, even if you're somewhat good, right? Like if you're the third best in something, I mean, it's not good enough. And then so maybe Litecoin is like the 5th best thing in something, and it's not even the meme coin, right? So you're kind of like, you're shit out of luck, even if it's a decent coin. Like being the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th best at something is kind of like being shit. Doesn't really matter. And then, so if someone buys the 5th best gold alternative, you're shit out of luck, probably. Market's probably overheated. But yeah, we'll talk about all of that tomorrow on the Friday show. I'm gonna call it a night because I'm tired, and I actually wanted to keep this short, and it's long now, and it's also not that high quality given I mean I slept like 2 hours. So just thought like if I already missed the week, I'm gonna do one on Friday. And like I said, you're gonna get another Saturday episode, so don't be too sad. But yeah, appreciate you guys coming by. Much love. Big shout out to Woo, like I said, for sponsoring the show and taking our shit in stride. They're great, and yeah, links are in the description. I appreciate you guys coming by. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. and we'll see each other on Friday tomorrow. And yeah, see how that goes. Much love. Bye bye.